Mr. Ambassador, thank you for coming. And as I noticed, you are not very much eager usually to start from the negative developments. But I'm afraid, of course, we won't be able to avoid it. But still, my first question would be, what's the status of German-Georgian relations, bilateral relations right now? What's the routine? What is left from the relations of the two countries? And what has already been damaged and what still continues to work?
Thank you, Nino, for the opportunity to speak with Radio Liberty. We love Radio Liberty. It's true, my goal is not to be negative, never. I'm a very optimistic, positive person. I'm sent here by the German government to have good relations with Georgia. You know, Georgia and Germany were similar in one way. We are at the center of a region. We're surrounded by neighbors. So we depend on good relations, reasonable relations with our neighbors, on connectivity. And so the goal is good relations. And for over 30 years, we've had incredibly good relations with Georgia. It's a success story. And we think we've been a trusted, faithful, and valuable partner and friend to Georgia over the past 30 years. We were the first to have diplomatic relations with Georgia. We have incredibly broad and deep relations in every field. Much of the electricity grid in Georgia was financed by Germany. The entire water supply of Batumi is financed by German taxpayers like myself. In vocational training, we had a big role in preparing the private sector of Georgia for international competition. Most of the national parks of Georgia have been financed from Germany, and so on and so forth. I don't even need to, I think every Georgian knows the relationship in the field of culture, all the scholarships that we give, and the traditions that exist in academic exchange. Every Georgian that knows anything about the Georgian military knows that our armed forces have a very close cooperation. And even in 1918, we were the first. On the street, every Georgian tells me, you were the first in 1918 and you were the first in 1992. So very good relations. And all that culminated in the offer of the European Union for Georgia to have candidate status for the European Union. Our union. European Union is for us the most essential thing. It is the basis of our peace, of our freedom and democracy, and our prosperity. And offering candidate status is a big offer from us. I like to say it's like saying, come into our living room, sit there with us, but we don't at the end of the evening say, ask you to go home again, stay with us in our living room. So an extremely friendly and big offer, not just a gesture, it's a serious, serious offer. So over 30 years, the relations led to this culmination point, really. And after candidate status should come the opening of negotiations about entering the European Union. And the European Union means an extremely close integration of states. It's a special thing, which means extremely close relations. So 30 years support for Georgia's democracy, for Georgia's economy, and for Georgia's Euro-Atlantic integration. Culmination point, candidacy status in December 2023. And our idea was this will go on, and we will integrate more and more, and we will have the closest imaginable relations. However, since early 2024, the Georgian authorities have performed a U-turn, we say, in traffic, if you're coming in the street, and you turn around and are now racing away in another direction. In bilateral relations, there's two parts, like in any relation. And our offer is still there. You are a candidate for the European Union. Join us. We haven't changed. Georgian government has changed. We can speak about specifics, but the fact is that we are still ready for a good partnership. But of course, it takes the other side to be a good partner too.
The idea initially, as I understood, was that the three countries, Ukraine, Georgia, Moldova, would follow this path towards the EU more or less together. Of course, that's an individual process for each country. What would you say? Is Georgia already detached from those two countries of trio?
Yes, it's a fact. Ukraine and Moldova have opened negotiations with us. Georgia has not. So they have taken a step that Georgia was not able to take. That happened last December, I think it was. And our idea was to keep this, we call it Black Sea Trio, together. That would be the best thing. Yes, Georgia is detached. Georgia has wasted all the time since December 2023, so 1.5 years, without making any progress. In fact, Georgia has distanced itself from the EU. Maybe I should say what I've said before publicly. What does it mean to join the EU? If I ask young Georgian students, they say, democracy, values, shared history, Christianity. I say, all that is fair enough. Values, yes, but the values lead to something. The values lead to law. To join the European Union, a candidate state must, it's not an option, it's not up for negotiation, must adopt European legislation, and all of it. The Union is a legal body, and the essence is we all have the same legislation. If you're in the EU, European legislation is your legislation. As soon as you've done that, you can be a member. As long as you don't do that, you cannot be a member. And Georgia has been passing laws which are not only not in line with European legislation. We speak technically of transposing European legislation. What happens is a parliament says, this European legislation, we adopt a law that now this European legislation is our law. And we have a lot of legislation about the safety of lights in media studios and environmental legislation and traffic and exhaust norms. That's all important and a vast body of legislation. But the core areas are the functioning of a liberal democracy. That's what the European Union is about, and the institutions of a rule of law state. And Georgia has been passing laws that are fundamentally contradictory to these basic elements. So with this kind of legislation, you just can't join. Nobody has to join. It's entirely voluntary, but with this type of legislation, Georgia won't join.
We'll return to the legislation issue, of course. But my question would be again about this integration process and detachment. Is there still a chance for Georgia if there are certain improvements to still join Ukraine and Moldova process?
Yes, the candidate status is still available. How the process works is not a mystery at all. Everyone knows.
Yeah.
All our things are written down. You can read exactly what the European Union is. Namely, it's in the treaties of the European Union. We're a union of liberal democracies. How the process of joining works, you must adopt the European legislation. You must transpose our legislation to yours. And the first step is candidacy status. Then the next step would be opening of negotiations. You know, we call it negotiations. It's not really a negotiation. It's, frankly speaking, it's more of a screening. There are 35 chapters, I believe, of European legislation. And the Commission and the candidate state, once negotiations are opened, which is not yet the case for Georgia, meet and they look at each chapter one by one, and they say, legislation transposed, chapter closed. And when all 35 are closed, then the state can join. So yes, that is a possibility, but right now there's not a positive sign from the Georgian authorities that they're interested in it.
Of course, I'm aware of that, but still there remains a chance that these three countries may be together at the finish line.
There remains a chance, and that's what we would like. That's what's on offer.
Okay.
You know, sometimes it's said that we're sometime, you know, I started by saying we were great partners and friends for 30 years. For some reason, all of a sudden, we've become hostile forces. I don't want to repeat some of the ridiculous terminology that's used for us. Global War Party, Deep State, radicals. It's not the case. We're here to have friendship. We're here offering Georgia membership in the European Union if it wants. We don't force this on anyone.
About that you used that word invitation into the room. How long can we stay in that waiting room, so to say, as a candidate country? Do you see any time limitations for that, for this current status of Georgia?
So the quality and the speed of the accession process are in the hands of the candidate. They have to transpose the European legislation. That's the first thing I would say. There is no time limit officially, but as in any political process, lost time is lost time. Georgia has wasted all the time since December 2023. And there are, for example, Turkey, the negotiations were suspended because from our European point of view, the Turks were no longer showing interest in the process. That can happen. And I've also said this before publicly, in life, as in politics, there are windows of opportunities that don't necessarily have to be open forever. After the Russian attack on Ukraine, there was a great enthusiasm for enlargement. You know, enlargement provides some challenges also for existing member states. There have always been voices in the EU that said, enough enlargement. How many people do you want to invite to our union? It's getting more and more complicated for us. We have right-winged populist parties in many European states, including in Germany, that say, stop the enlargement. That means the people from the enlargement countries become EU citizens. We don't want all those foreigners. That's what these right-wing parties say. So sometimes you can miss your, you know, the French word rendezvous, your meeting with history. After the attack of Russia on the Ukraine, the mood was, let's put aside the concerns we may have about enlargement. Let's advance the enlargement agenda. Now is the moment where, as a union of peace, democracy, and prosperity, we really have to follow the principle that if my neighbor is doing well, I am doing well. And any country that can reasonably be called European in terms of geography and in terms of civilization, that asks to join, it will be better for all of us if our union with our values is strong, because Russia is challenging us, other authoritarian states are challenging us. So this is a moment of historic opportunity. And I don't know, I can't predict the future, but it's never guaranteed that this enthusiasm for enlargement will stay as strong as it is right now. And we say clearly Georgia is a European country in terms of geography, in terms of civilization. We can feel that when we're here as guests in your country. There are countries that are closer to us, perhaps Algeria, closer than Georgia, but to Germany at least. But in terms of civilization, no real connection to Europe. And there are countries like Chile, where some people might say, oh, they're very European, but in terms of geography, it's out of the question. So there's an opportunity, and Germany has always said, Georgia, if you're really interested, make the effort and be aware that sometimes an opportunity can slip away.
Yeah, nobody can predict precisely, because politics inside each EU country are not static.
Yes.
They develop, they change, and geopolitical situation is also changing. But for today, what place does Georgia take in Germany's foreign policy? Has anything changed since the new government took office in Germany, Chancellor Merz's government? Are there any changes already, or it still continues?
So there is no fundamental change in the policy of the German government vis-à-vis Georgia. We have a big advantage in Germany that we have a large consensus in the middle about our foreign policy priorities. Changes are, a matter of degree. Georgia is in our coalition agreement. In Germany, the parties who wish to form a governing coalition sign a document, many pages long, many details in it. And there are 2 sentences about Georgia. That's the basis of our new government's policy towards Georgia. The first is the continuing of the accession process to the EU with Georgia is unthinkable as long as normal democratic standards in Georgia aren't followed. Sentence 1. And sentence 2, in this regard, we stand on the side of the pro-European forces in Georgia. 2 pretty clear sentences. 1, we continue to support European Union membership of Georgia, but we can't as long as normal democratic processes, normal in our standards, aren't followed in Georgia. So in general, the policy towards Georgia hasn't changed. The policy towards EU enlargement hasn't changed. You've seen some slight variations of degree with regard to Russia, Ukraine. Chancellor Merz has made a number of statements indicating that he does not wish to entertain any illusions about Russian foreign policy, the danger that Russia presents to Germany, to the European Union, the lack of will to make peace in Ukraine, and the negative influence it exercises on other countries like Georgia. So he's been very clear on that.
Yeah, he definitely has been. You mentioned, not only in this interview, but in previous ones too, that I watched and listened, that this dynamics of deterioration, attitudes, policy and rhetorics towards the EU, towards you personally as a representative of Germany, to gain its special pace since Georgia was granted a candidate status. And this dynamics was like you describe it, that you Germans in Germany, you are the best friend of Georgia, to this last commentaries of Georgian Dream high officials, like you being a radical, you encouraging a certain opposition person to self-destruction, when you visited two opposition leaders and several activists who were on hunger strike in front of the parliament, and that it even went to the point when one of the members of the Georgian Dream Parliament repeated, because he said that approximately a year ago, I mean, Mr. Zarkua, that he might initiate your expulsion from the country. So from being the best friend to the deep state, being Soviet, being radical, etc., I'm sure you know that better, and our viewers also. So I know that you haven't seen any deep state anywhere in Germany's bureaucracy during 39 years of your service to the German state, but still, what logic do you see in the above dynamics of deterioration since the moment Georgia was granted a candidate status? There were some signs before that too, but because we know the first introduction of so-called Russian law preceded that decision, but still this very special period since granting candidate status. What's the logic of that development? What do you think? I'm not going to ask you whether you are a representative of a deep state or etc. I don't want to lose any time on that.
But I would just say that in 39 years of working in the German Foreign Ministry, I did not only not see any deep state, I know that there is no deep state. Yeah, I've explained this often enough. Yeah. It's a 1,000-year-old tradition in politics. If there is a challenge, to say there is an external enemy somewhere, he's very strong, but he can't be seen. He's never named. He has a name, but I never say exactly. And therefore, we must resist these external people. The Greeks, the Romans, everyone does this. It's very popular. Say, it's not me, it's the threat from outside. Strangely, in Georgia, the former best friends were picked now to be the enemies. So sometimes it leads me to the question, who is your friend now? Who is going to be your ally and supporter? Which sort of union integration does Georgia want to belong to? Or we can say, where does Georgia want to have a shoulder to lean on? That's the first part. So just to repeat, the deep state does not exist. It doesn't exist in the USA either. I know the USA quite well. We are unable to have a decades-long conspiracy against others. And just to repeat, we're ready to be a partner and a friend. We are not hostile. We do not engage in domestic politics. On the radicals, I don't think the two people that I had a 10-minute chat with on the stairs of the Parliament of Georgia, who went into a hunger strike, are radicals. They may have another opinion than some of the people sitting in the parliament and some of the Georgian authorities, but that doesn't make them radical. And, you know, there's an atmosphere that's being spread actively that who is not for us is against us. That's also a slogan that we know from history, from even the worst histories that we can imagine. Who is not for us is a radical, is an enemy, is a violent, is a terrorist. And anybody who has any connection to them is also a radical and a violent person and a terrorist and anti-state and anti-Georgian. It's just not true. The EU is a radical and a terrorist towards Georgia. I meet Georgians all the time and everyone says, who is believing this? And no one should believe it. Just think of the partnership that we've had and see if you can draw negative conclusions. Now on the logic, I think it's a domestic politics logic. It's a domestic fight, and as a good diplomat, I have nothing to say about the domestic politics of Georgia. When I say something, I can say from the standpoint of the EU, Georgia is a candidate country. You are measured by us. We do measure and we do judge you because you're a candidate country. Mm-hmm. It's not only our right to judge Georgia as a candidate country, it's our duty to our own citizens. And there you have deviated from the standards of a realistic EU candidate. You're staying well below EU standards. And Germany and many of our friendly countries, we say we have a duty to intervene on behalf of human rights everywhere. We think also that is legally grounded, for example, by universal laws of human rights, the UN Human Rights Charter that Georgia has signed. You are a signatory to this. You are obliged by that. And so when we feel that EU standards are undermined or global human rights standards, we speak out. Formally, we don't care who governs Georgia. That's up to the Georgians. It's not our country, it's your country.
But still, before going to the spot where hunger strike was still going on, what was your idea? As I understand, you must have been sure that it would gain some additional attention from the Georgian Dream authorities, some additional, irritation towards you, but you still did it.
Yes.
And you visited and met Ms. Khoshtaria and Mr. Popkhadze, Gedevan Popkhadze, yeah.
For once I know a Georgian last name. Yeah. Usually I forget, yeah.
And why did you do that? What was your intention, or what you wanted to demonstrate with that?
Yeah, I can tell you very frankly, I was on my way to another event, a nice reception in a beautiful location in Georgia, where everybody's wearing more or less smart clothing and expensive sunglasses and drinking champagne and eating good food. And I came by the parliament. And I have met Mrs. Khoshtaria a number of times, also with German visitors. As far as I can tell, she's not a radical and not a violent person. Her party is a member of the liberal group of European party families. And as I came by, I felt a human and moral impulse to make a stop and to speak to someone who has announced a hunger strike. A hunger strike is a very serious and potentially very dangerous thing. The night before, I was at an event, and when the news broke that she's on a hunger strike, I saw people that were crying. And they said, the news just came that she is going on hunger strike, and they cried because they knew that her health is not, she has some other health issues, and she has children. So it was just a human and moral impulse. I thought it was the decent thing to do. I talked to her and Mr. Popchadze, who I hadn't met before, for about 10 minutes. What we discussed is between them and me. No one knows except them and me. And to make assumptions about what we discussed is preposterous and ridiculous. And to pass a moral judgment about me in that situation, I don't accept that at all. And yeah.
You were accused again with intervention in Georgia's inner politics and violating Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. Georgian Dream Parliament Speaker, Georgian Dream Prime Minister, they both accused you. And do you think, just to wrap up this part, do you expect that it might end up with your expulsion finally?
I don't know. That's not up to me.
I understand, and that is not your plan and your intention,
yes,
of course.
I'm here on behalf of the government of the Federal Republic of Germany. I'm doing my job to pursue the interests of the Federal Republic of Germany. I'm not here for Georgian interest. I'm paid by Germany for Germany. I know my government stands behind me. We've covered all the ground that Germany has been one of the closest partners and best friends of Georgia. It's explicitly stated in the Vienna Convention that a diplomat's task is to collect by all lawful means information on the situation in the country. And if we just take the example of what happened last weekend, 2 people are on hunger strikes on the steps of the parliament in Georgia. It's a public place. I approached a public place. I walked across. I didn't sneak in. I passed the policeman. We said "Gamajoba" to each other. I walked up. We had a talk in the full public view, and I went away. I think that's my task as an ambassador. So I did that. I think it's sad that myself and other diplomat colleagues are regularly being attacked in an unjust and unfair way in this country. It's not only me, it's others, the EU ambassador, the British ambassador, the previous US ambassador.
Current US ambassador.
Yes, and we are doing our jobs representing the interests of our governments, and I know from all those concerned that their governments and institutions stand fully behind them. We tried not to take it personally because it's really not about us. We are just civil servants serving our countries.
Actually, the rhetoric show also that those terms and what are used by the GD officials are not that personal, because finally, when they start talking about you and your colleagues from other countries, they finish with the perspective of deteriorating relations between deteriorating attitude of, because that you threaten damaging attitude of Georgian people in your case, towards German people, which has been so wonderful during all this over 30 years, etc. So when you ask yourself a question, if they turn back from their long-time friends, where do they look for the new friends and where they would find themselves comfortable? You might not answer, but do you have answer on that? What's the goal of all that campaign?
I don't have answer. Let me come back to that. I would just say also to the previous, there's been accusations, false accusations leveled against me for giving instruction to the opposition. I challenged the people who made those accusations to prove it somehow. Of course, it's not true. I never give instruction to any opposition. That's the one point. So that just to restate that this accusation is completely false. It's impossible to prove it, and no one has made any effort. So it's just a propaganda all the time being thrown onto myself and foreign diplomats. Another important thing, for 2 years I was the best friend of all these people who are criticizing me now. I sat with them in meeting rooms, in parliament, at Supras, in the embassy, and we spoke very trustfully, very confidentially, very friendly, on a personal, nice level about the great future of Georgian-German relations. I don't know what it is.
You don't know what happened.
I think it's about Georgian domestic politics, and that's not my métier, right? So a lot of people that used to be really nice to me now are being unnice to me.
I know that high-level relations and communications are halted. There is such guidance of the EU, but have you happened to meet, just unofficially, just by chance, any of those GD officials you had this good, wonderful relations with, those who have themselves very good experience of studying in Germany or working with German organizations, etc.?
Recently, not really.
Okay.
Not to the most important people. We do have a European guidance from last June from the European Union that we are freezing high-level contacts because of the actions of the Georgian authorities, and that includes myself as an ambassador. Occasionally, people come by that I know, and I'm a civil person. I shake their hand, but we haven't had any official meetings. And recent criticism has I'm not representing the will of the German people or violating the German constitution. I think everyone can rest in peace and be comfortable that we can take care of our own people and our own constitution by ourselves perfectly well without any support from Georgia.
Still, did you have a time before freezing these relations, official relations, to ask a question to any Georgian Dream official about, for instance, initially they would use Global War Party, then Deep State, to ask question about that rhetoric, that idea, or whatever we can call it?
There were in the time between December 23 and early 24, we still had some meetings, and sometimes myself and German visitors, politicians and members
because that campaign started before.
But it were never substantial exchanges. We said, what is this all about? And the answer is always the same. It exists, we know, but we can't speak.
Those times you were not a representative or part of that.
You never know. The Global War Party, the deep state, they're here, they're there.
They would not call you like that yet. In those times, initially.
No, I don't think anybody has ever said that to my face or to a German visitor's face.
Okay.
The deep state is, you can't, it's typical for this kind of phantom. Those who propagate the idea of a deep state having such a strong influence, they just say, we know it's there, but we can't tell you exactly because no reason given.
Last month, you met with the Anti-Corruption Bureau chief.
Yes.
And there was a short note published about that. And would you be able to share with us more details? Was it your initiative, as I understand? And what was the meeting about? It was before or after inaction of
FARA and the Grant Law.
So-called FARA.
Yeah, it was our initiative.
What was the purpose?
Actually, we asked for a meeting with the Foreign Ministry, and they directed us to the Anti-Corruption Bureau.
Okay.
Germany has a very good relationship with Georgia. We're doing many, many things in Georgia every day for a lot of German taxpayers' money, and the delivery of those programs is in the hands of 13 German organizations that are all financed from the German federal budget. Probably you know GIZ, that's like a technical cooperation. They advise Tbilisi and Batumi, for example, on sustainable urban development. They work with the Ministry of Education on vocational training, a very important subject for Georgia. We are building a vocational training school here in Tbilisi. There's the KfW, which is a state-owned German bank which gives soft loans. Sometimes people say it's only a loan. It's a loan you can't get at the bank because the conditions are so
With a long experience of cooperating with Georgia, yeah.
I know. We've financed most of your electricity grid.
Oh, yeah.
Which is the main station, which is important for your international connections. We financed your national parks. We financed the water supply in Batumi, and so on and so forth. There are others. There's a German Academic Exchange Service, which gives 150 scholarships last year to Georgian students of different kinds. There's the Goethe Institute, which has been for 30 years here, connecting Georgian, German, and Southern Caucasus artists, people who are working in the creative space. We call them political foundations. They work on things like women's rights, voter participation, and many, many others. Yeah. We have a German Historical Institute here. We have a German school here, German federal budget, with a portfolio of 1 billion euros. 1 billion euros. And they are all directly affected by the legislation passed by the Georgian parliament, the so-called Transparency Law, the so-called FARA Law, and the Grants Law. And I asked for the meeting, first with the ministry, but I was directed to anti-corruption, because we have to know how will our organizations be treated under those three laws, because otherwise they don't know how to do their work. And we want to basically continue with this work.
What was the message of Mr. Kuprashvili?
And all these organizations are also included in bilateral treaties that we have with Georgia. So these three laws, which, by the way, are all fundamentally antithetical to European Union, because we promote civil society, that the citizens express their interest and they form organizations, NGOs, all affect directly our organizations. And his reaction was, I will let you know for all the organizations. And in the meantime, he has, and KfW and GIZ are excluded. That's the main money stream, right? Let's not hurt the money stream. And for all of them except the political organizations, we kind of see how it should be done. But he also advised that according to the law and the FARA law, for example, cultural organizations are excluded. But, you know, it's a definition, cultural. You can work in the cultural space and still there's an interface to the political space. And these organizations employ several hundred people, manage a portfolio of €1 billion, and there are consequences under criminal law for the people. So we also have a duty to protect our employees, Germans and Georgians, and others. We have people from other nations working for us. So we're trying to find out, and we have some of the answers, but for example, on the grants law, we still don't know exactly. We have thousands of financial transactions every month. Every transaction we have to ask for permission. You want us to hire people to manage that process, to spend our taxpayer money on getting approval for grants that we thought were part of our shared program, our shared cooperation, our shared vision. So all that is very problematical, not only on a fundamentally legal basis regarding the rule of law and democracy, but also just on management of a good cooperation. In the end, we obey the laws of our host country. We are not illegal actors. We are not subversive. We don't act outside the law. We have to obey the laws of the host country, always.
Is it possible to obey?
We don't know. We don't. On the grants law, we don't know.
Practical.
It's always possible to obey the law. We just don't know what the consequences will be. And on the grants law, we're still waiting for specifics.
Okay.
So it's kind of a weird situation for us, spending all this German taxpayers' money in Georgia, and it's being made more difficult for us.
Germany introduced sanctions to targeting certain individuals in Georgia. Are more sanctions expected? Being elaborated?
Possible. I mean, it's possible that there are
more
sanctions.
Due to the situation in the country.
Yeah, we imposed entry bans on 13 individuals that, according to our assessment, had violated the human rights of demonstrators, their right to free expression and to demonstrate peacefully. As you know, even the Ombudsman of Georgia, who was a state authority, determined that there was systematic, he discovered in the people he visited, I think 60% had suffered injuries during the arrest. Well, that's too high. That's a violation of human rights. So we did that nationally because we weren't able to do it on the EU level because Hungary and Slovakia always put in a veto. And if we determine that human rights violations continue, we may add additional names. It's possible. But just to come back, that's not what we want. We want to get back to our good partnership.
What does that mean in practical terms for the person who is under sanction, for an official or whoever he or she is? Would that person still be able to visit your country? Is it about just asking for visa?
No, this is an entry ban. These people are not welcome
in
Germany.
Totally banned, you mean?
This is not welcome in our country. And if they turn up at the border, they will be asked to go home.
You are following trials quite thoroughly, and you also attended the Amar-Lopelis trial. And what's the reason for that high attention towards this particular case, which concerns a media manager, concerns a journalist, prominent journalist with a very, very long and good experience in Georgia. What was your not only impression, but I'm sorry to ask you that, what was the report you sent to your capital, and what are the signals and messages about that particular case?
Yes.
And also, I would like to know about the cases of Georgian politicians, opposition politicians who are under prison now, and activists.
So, just to repeat, I think it's Article 42 of the Vienna Convention on diplomats that says the duty of the diplomat and the right of the diplomat is to, by all lawful means, to collect relevant information about the country. If a court hearing is public, it is lawful to attend, also for a diplomat. Therefore, it is a standard diplomatic practice all around the world for diplomats to attend court hearings if they think it's interesting for some reason. That's what we are doing systematically here, not only in the case of Mzia Amohlebeli, but in the case of other people who have been arrested. Now, freedom of the press is a fundamental freedom. We think it's a part of the human rights, as I said, universally recognized. Without freedom of the press, you cannot enter the EU. Full stop. I have stated in a long interview what our concerns are. It's all about the proportionality of punishment. Is the proportionality really, is it still in some relation to the act? We think here the putting of a sticker and a slap of a policeman. How long has she been in jail now? 5 months already? It's legitimate to ask questions about the proportionality. We think it's not proportional anymore. So we go and we look at the court case to get an impression how the Georgian justice system is working. There were very unfair comments and sort of unfactual comments about that we're trying to pressure the judiciary by being present, and it's a violation of the Vienna Convention. It's all incorrect. Again, there were people always spread lots of assumptions about what we diplomats do. Most of the assumptions are just plain wrong, and how we work. You know, the trial that I attended, there was, I don't think also that Mzia
Amohlebeli,
that's the last name, I'm sorry about the Georgian last names, is a dangerous, radical, and criminal. Doesn't appear that way to me. It's up to the Georgian justice to determine. But she's a woman with a very poor eyesight. She put a sticker and she slapped a policeman. When I was there, the question was the injury of the policeman. And they questioned her for 1.5 hours. They questioned the witness of the prosecution, the medical expert. And the policeman said my cheek was red and I felt a stinging sensation. They questioned for 1.5 hours the witness of the prosecution, whether the redness of the cheek indicates an injury or indicates pain. And he said it doesn't indicate anything. So for 1.5 hours we followed this line of questioning. And by the way, any Georgian diplomat is welcome to enter any court in Germany and follow a trial if they have concerns about our justice systems or concern about a citizen There are very few trials for extremely dangerous terrorists and so where the public is excluded.
So I'm afraid you diplomats who will be interested in getting information on any trial, you will have to at least try to attend personally, or your colleagues, because, as you know, it's already prohibited for the media to record and make any photos or record video, audio during court hearings, which makes this process, the system itself, closed for the large audience, for the citizens of Georgia, which is very problematic.
Indeed.
And which makes it harder and more challenging for the journalists, for us to cover the trials. But of course, we still keep doing it. But it's more and more complicated because we do it on a regular basis, quite intensively, not only the RFERL, but the whole Georgian media. And we will do our best, of course, but it's very challenging. Yesterday we learned about the hybrid format meeting called by the French minister Benjamin Haddad as a coordination meeting with partner countries, initiated by the UK Minister of State for Europe, North America and UK Overseas Territories on the situation in Georgia. And the French minister himself wrote that the authoritarian excesses of the Georgian dream are unacceptable and this trajectory runs counter to the Georgian people's aspirations for Europe, and we will not remain without a response. Are you informed about that meeting? Because we saw the the photo was attached to this post of Minister Haddad. There were two photos, and on one of them we saw quite many people participating in that meeting. Was Germany represented there, German government? And would you be able to give us more information? What was that meeting for and what to expect from it?
So, I mean, that's what we do in foreign policy. We observe what's happening in another country. We observe with grave concern what's happening in Georgia. We talked about the 3 laws which stifle civil society. We see arrests of prominent opposition politicians, you know,
for not taking part in
yes,
Venice Commission.
We could talk about all the reasons, but you know, when prominent opposition politicians get arrested in a country, you know, really across the board, and basically more are likely to come. It's my assumption. It's a reason for concern. We see new rules for NGOs. So additional burden on civil society. We see a rhetoric which is exactly the contrary of the good partnership that we wish for. Of course, we are concerned. I know Germany is involved in this process. I'm pretty sure that we took part. I took part in preparing the German Minister for Europe for this meeting. I didn't have the readout yet, since you like to know exactly how things work and what it says in the reports. I didn't see yet, so but I'm quite sure that he was also in the meeting, or his team was in the meeting. So yes, Europe plus UK, we're looking with grave concern at the situation in Georgia. Deterioration of the democratic principles that we believe in. And just to repeat, as a candidate country, we do measure you, we do judge you, we do express our opinion on whether you are meeting our standard or not. Georgia wants to go to another standard, it can do that. Georgia can do whatever it wants, but it can't do whatever it wants and join the European Union and have the same good relations it had before with EU countries and other countries like the ones that are participating in the meeting. We see with concern the situation of opposition politicians, the situation of the media. I mentioned the violence against demonstrators, and we just see the rhetoric every day. So they had a meeting to think about what to do about it. And it's, you know, it takes a relationship is two sides. And if one side seems to want worse relations, the other side usually adjusts. And what we do is we make some adjustments to signal to Georgia that there's a problem. We have to signal to the authorities here, this is not how we want to proceed. And Germany has given many signals. We put on hold development projects that were planned, that were worth 327 million euros. We said, let's just not pursue them for now. Let's see, perhaps in the future if it gets better. We made the entry ban.
Which time period, that amount? For which time period?
For the future. That was, you know, it's hard to explain in easy terms, but it's an opportunity cost. It's money that was coming to Georgia in the future, but which right now is on hold. It's nothing we've taken away, but we have taken it away, but taken it away for the future. We made the sanctions. The EU has put the accession process on hold. And there may be other steps that Germany, the EU, and perhaps other countries might take to signal we have a problem and to right-size our relationship. I see three options for Georgia. One, continue on the path towards EU. From my perspective, I would say golden future. It was very good for the Baltics and for Czechia and for Poland and Slovakia and so on. It will lead to deep and meaningful relations with the EU and EU member states, including Germany. If Georgia chooses another path, we don't want this anymore. We don't fulfill the conditions, so we can't have it. We want to be a small state in the Southern Caucasus, no special alliance, a tiny, tiny market, 3.7 million, no market integration with anyone. The middle corridor is a concept, it's not a reality. It requires a lot of work, a lot of investment, a lot of planning, a lot of time. So, tiny market. Some people say, oh, we could be Switzerland. Okay, that's fine, do it. Then Germany will also have relations, but they will be different from those very integrated relations in the EU. The EU is something special. We can have good relations with a small country in the Southern Caucasus. If, on top of that, the third option would be Georgia wants to be a small state in the Southern Caucasus and stay below human rights standards, stay below democracy standards as seen, let's say, from Germany, that's also possible. But we will have, again, very different relations in the future. We have relations with so many countries.
Yeah.
Different opportunities. Let's just say from our point of view, because that's what I'm here for. The best opportunities if you join the EU, the best opportunities for strategic, for security, the best opportunities for economic development.
Yeah.
The second option, we are 450 million people in the EU. We don't really need 3.7 million more. I think we're the biggest market in the world, or at least one of them. The Georgian market is nice to have, but our fate doesn't depend on it. Well, that could be, the middle option could be something. But if you run an authoritarian state here that's underneath our democratic values, then it will not be very interesting for us anymore.
Again, about that meeting, this discussion, coordination meeting, the report you will receive, that won't be public, as I understand, right?
No, the reports that I receive and that I write are not public. But there may be a public statement. I don't know.
Maybe.
Perhaps
okay.
perhaps a statement will come out. I'm not sure.
Okay. Okay, we'll follow. And we have approached the reality, what we have already been discussing during our interview. Just to sum up reality, where opposition leaders, activists, protesters, journalists are in prison. We've been following trials, and I don't know how possible it is. What ways would you see? You mentioned U-turn in the beginning. To make one more U-turn, what is needed for that? What is necessary for that?
Yeah.
Just political will, or what? I just want to hear from you.
So what would be necessary to get the relations back on track is to stop violating human rights. I know everyone will say, oh, double standards, human rights are violated in Germany. Of course it happens sometimes. But the question, is it systematic? And are the human rights violations being pursued by the authorities? Stop violating human rights. With regard to the EU, stop passing laws which, in the most fundamental areas of democracy and the rule of law, are contradictory to EU. Not just not compatible, contradictory, straightforward contradictory. Start again to transpose EU legislation. Get back on that path. And the third, I've said this publicly too, if you want good relations, don't curse us all the time. I mean,
at least.
Yeah, that's not the most important part, but it's an essential part. If, you know, diplomacy and international relations are not so different from personal relations. If I want to have a good relation with someone, I shouldn't talk bad about them all the time and in a very fundamental way. So it's clear what would need to happen to get relations back on a better track. But maybe I can just take one step back and say, we are ready for that. And, you know, I go around Tbilisi and Georgia all the time, in the streets, in the public places. And all I ever get is expressions of affection, of solidarity, of people saying, you know, we are dreaming about a European future, and we're concerned that it might be being taken away from us. And we thank Germany, we thank the EU for their support, and please don't abandon us. Please don't abandon us. People say it all the time, and I always say, we haven't abandoned you, and we have no intention of abandoning you. Our offer is there. You're still officially a candidate country. So it's clear what might have to happen. And it makes me optimistic about the future, that all I ever see is friendly Georgian people with a European dream. And we have that same dream. And we're ready to travel that path together.
Mr. Ambassador, we've talked a lot about the European Union integration process and details of that. But we have not mentioned the NATO integration process of Georgia. I have one question to you. During your term, do you remember, and what, if you do, what kind of discussions or requests from the Georgian Dream governments were about the NATO integration issue, about having support from Germany, gaining support from more support from Germany, about cooperation in the defense area, etc. Would you remember?
Oh, of course. You know, I mentioned that for a long time of my tenure, we had excellent friendly relations. I met all the ministers all the time. And I had several meetings with ministers at the Ministry of Defense, also with the current Minister of Defense. The previous people have disappeared. I participated twice in the handover of German material to Georgia, pioneering and medical equipment and mine searching equipment. So during my short time, we gave material worth 23 million euros to the Georgian Armed Forces. Our armed forces have a long-standing, very good cooperation. Many Georgian military staff, people, including the highest leadership, were trained in Germany. We have ongoing programs in a number of very important areas. We have put some programs on hold, like the development. We said we planned upgrades in many areas. Until 2023, we thought the relations will get better and better and better and deeper and more integrated on the way to European Union. So some upgrades in the military area, we also said, let's pause, because we're concerned about the direction of this country. About NATO, you know, we were on the same line that at an appropriate time, Georgia should join NATO. Also, Georgia has to be ready to join NATO. Also, you can't just join NATO saying, I'd like to. You have to be, the armed forces have to be in a position and a capacity to join NATO. You know, it's a much trickier issue than EU. But NATO is also an alliance of democracies, free democracies. And Russia is presenting a major challenge to NATO right now. So I think we still have that same fundamental position on Georgia. But right now it's not a big priority. The last NATO summit,
I saw the declaration.
We were very focused on the 5% goal and on the
Ukraine.
Immediate challenge posed by Russia through its aggression against Ukraine and its hostile activities towards many NATO members, including Germany, including in the Baltic Sea, and so on. So we are under a real threat now from Russia to a real and current activity of Russia directed against us. So we were focused on that rather than long-term planning.
You talked about the cooperation on different issues concerning the defense and military cooperation, but was there any, I have also asked about the Georgian Dream government, or was there any initiative or request from them, let's try to upgrade this process, something like that?
Towards
please,
NATO membership?
Yeah, please, would you be helpful or something?
I would say we stayed in the standard framework without any special initiative.
Mr. Kombachidze, when he was in the parliament, reporting to the parliament session, it was 27th of June, he repeated, it was not first time, he repeated that despite unfair attitudes from the European bureaucracy, we are ready to make every step to contribute to our country's European integration, and that we have a declared goal of becoming the European Union's full member state in 2030. And also he stated that Georgian Dream government would like to accomplish 90% of the obligations taken under association agreement by the 2028. And we are actively working on that, he said. I don't want to start the interview from the very beginning, of course, but I would like your comments on that. Chances and plans.
I think almost every word in that statement is, how should I describe it? Every word in that statement is problematic. Unfair attitude. We offered you candidacy status. It's the best offer we can make. What other sign of generosity and love do you want? Unfair attitude.
Is it realistic?
And European bureaucracy, who is that supposed to be? The attitude of the EU towards the European Union is decided by the European Council. Those are the 27 heads of state and government. They are elected highest representatives. It's not a bureaucracy.
At all, being it fair or unfair, but it's about the leaders.
It's neither unfair nor it's a bureaucracy. The European Council has said several times in writing what our position is towards Georgian accession. Then association agreement and membership are two different things. We have association agreement with so many countries in the world that will never be a member of the European Union because they haven't applied and because they're just geographically or civilizationally not suited.
It's not about membership.
Association agreement is not about membership. It's not the same. If only I knew. I think the two countries I mentioned, Algeria and Chile, have association agreement with us. We have with many, many countries. If Georgia wants just association agreement without membership, please say so. We can spare ourselves lots of working hours thinking about membership. So that is often confused. 2030 is in 5 years. 1.5 years have been completely wasted. We talked about windows of opportunity, historical meeting points that might slip away. We don't know what the situation will be in 5 years. But if Georgia were diligently working towards membership, transposing EU legislation, and not doing exactly the opposite, then 2030 would be extremely, extremely ambitious, taking into account that 1.5 years, and even those before, have been wasted. I remind you that we gave candidacy status on trust. We gave like a credit to Georgia. Do you remember the 9 points, the 12 points?
I do.
Yes.
I personally.
Yeah, so we said, well, Georgia doesn't have to fulfill all our expectations before candidacy status because Georgia is such a great place. We don't have to front load conditions. It will come. We trust Georgia. So 2030 is at best extremely ambitious, but not if you complain about unfairness when we are being very fair and very generous. Not if you talk about European bureaucracy when you mean the Council of Europe, European Council, sorry, not the Council of Europe, the European Council, 27 heads of state and government that made that decision and those decisions together. And not if you mix up association agreement with enlargement process. That's not very serious. And I think many people here know that it can't really be taken seriously.
And Mr. Ambassador, it's very important now for me to ask this question. I don't know how far you would be ready to answer, but are there still any any ways and resources to support Georgia's civil society and independent media, despite all the new laws and legislative amendments that Georgian Dream authorities adopted.
Yeah, so, you know, we always have to return to the fundamental thing. We want good relations with Georgia. We want to get back to what we've been doing for over 30 years. And relations between two countries are not just government to government. There's the whole economic sphere, there's a civil society sphere, there's the sphere of culture, media, people to people. And Germany and all the EU countries do a lot in that sense in all the areas. That's what we want. If we follow legislation, we are not lawbreakers. On the contrary, we are law observers. If a country makes it harder and harder for us to do the type of work that we've been doing, which probably most Georgians, if they reflect on it, they will say, that was helpful, that was good. We benefited from that. We liked that. Then we can do less. Let's take the example of Russia or Belarus. Sorry to have to go to such comparisons. What we try to maintain as long as possible, sometimes government to government just doesn't work anymore. Yeah, we can't even speak to each other anymore. There's no trust. Then the economy usually suffers when we have extremely bad relations with the country. German business people also say, well, we'll go and do our business elsewhere, especially if there's sanctions on top of it. We try as long as possible to keep the people-to-people relationship, to keep the relationship with civil society organizations, to support independent media because we think it's a fundamental human right for people to have access to independent journalism and to have freedom of expression. That's the other side of it, access and expression. And especially programs for young people. We support the German language here. In so many schools, we send teachers here. We send like junior professors to teach at Georgian universities. We give scholarships. We support youth exchange, vocational training. That's what we try to keep. And we say, even if politics there's no longer enough trust to have any reasonable communication, even if the economy sector is weak and the business people don't feel like doing business with each other anymore, there's spaces where we can still have a dialogue, we can still have communication between people when politics and economics is perhaps weak. And that's what we want. We want to have a good relationship with Georgia, with the Georgian people, because we always have had. You know, when I came here, I was so surprised. I said, I didn't realize what good relations there are with Georgia and what a tradition we have, especially in the cultural field, in the field of scholarship, academia, intellectuals, music, ballet, architecture, legal studies, medical field. Germany and Georgia have always had a good connection.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And hope to meet sometime later.
Yes, we always have to be optimistic. We said politics is dynamic. Every day is a new day. And if I remain optimistic about the future of Georgian relations because of the Georgian people that I meet, who, like me, want to have this good relation, like our government want to have this good relation. So, will of the people.